Jason, are you sure you want to marry me on the 7th? I'm sure. Okay, on the 7th, I'll finish up in New Zealand and come marry you. After hanging up the phone, Jason felt like he was in another world. If someone had told him before that he'd choose to marry someone he'd known for less than 6 months, he'd have thought it ridiculous. Everyone knew his biggest wish was to marry his childhood crush of 12 years, Selena. But now he was giving that up to marry another woman. After hanging up, Jason sat on the couch. At the same time, there was a live news broadcast on TV with an interview of our group's president, Selena. Selena looked stunning in her custom gown, her eyes always giving off an impression of deep affection. The journalist playfully asked, "Now that we've covered our group's plans, can we ask Selena some personal questions? Selena is the dream girl for many men. Let me dig a bit for them." Selena quietly nodded. "Go ahead." "So Selena, it said you bought a villa and a 10-carat blue diamond last month, symbolizing eternal love. Is there good news?" Everyone held their breath waiting for Selena's answer. No hesitation, she said, "Yes. A boy spent his youth on me, and I promised I'd marry him before I turned 30. He's turning 30 in 7 days. I don't want him to wait too long." Her decisive words caused an uproar and quickly made headlines. Selena's public confession. Heiress Selena's wedding is just 7 days away. All topics about her marriage were highlighted. When the news of Selena getting married broke, Jason's old friends started congratulating him on achieving his dream. After all, he once joked with Selena, "I'll wait for you until I'm 30. If you don't marry me by then, I won't want you anymore." Little did they know, the person Selena intended to marry wasn't him. Jason's parents and Selena's parents were neighbors. They grew up together and he had loved her for 12 years. How much did Jason love Selena? In high school, because of one word from Selena, he turned down a guaranteed spot at a college to attend her favorite college. After graduation, he gave up a $30,000 annual salary job to start a business with her. He invested 12 years in Selena, believing true love conquers all. But half a month ago, he discovered the house and blue diamond were gifts for a man named Charles, realizing how foolish he'd been for 12 years. In 7 days, it would be his 30th birthday. And the woman Selena wanted to marry wasn't him. So he decided not to waste any more time on her. When Selena returned, it was already late. As her assistant from their startup days and through life's trivialities, Jason managed everything. They were inseparable. To make work easier, Jason even moved in with her. At that moment, Jason was on the couch, picking out a suit for his wedding in 7 days while on the phone discussing details. The woman returning from a social event was slightly surprised Jason didn't greet her or take her coat. Instead, he was on the sofa calling, but she caught words like suit and wedding. Standing in the doorway, Selena massaged her temples in slight annoyance and reminded Jason, "What are you doing? Didn't you see I came home?" Jason put down the phone, glanced at Selena, and said, "Nothing. I saw you come back." Her brows furrowed with displeasure. She handed Jason her coat as usual. She was used to his care. He'd usually take her coat and wash it immediately when she got home. But this time, Jason refused calmly. "The washing machine's over there. If you want it washed, you can do it yourself." Jason had always been compliant and never refused her requests. This sudden refusal made Selena's alcohol-tinted eyes narrow, giving Jason a probing look. She couldn't pinpoint what was wrong but sensed something had changed. Jason appeared as normal as ever, without any odd emotions. Selena sighed in frustration. "A custom piece must be hand-washed." "Then take it to the laundry," Jason replied. Being refused repeatedly made Selena's temper flare. She yanked her tie in irritation, her voice turning cold. "What's gotten into you today?" Jason opened his mouth, realizing arguing was pointless and there was nothing more to say. He simply went back to his room. Upon entering, he overheard Selena on a call outside. Initially, he didn't want to listen, but the room's poor soundproofing caught every word through the cracked door. Selena's smooth voice carried arrogance. "I came home to find Jason sorting suits. Does he think I'll marry him when he's 30 because of the live interview? What I said was just to appease the journalists. I truly promised Charles I'd marry him in 7 days." On the other end, Someone seemed to ask why she didn't tell Jason the truth. Selena chuckled coldly, her beauty even sharper in her mocking tone. Would you throw away a free helper of over 10 years just like that? If I'm going to leave him, it'll be after I marry Charles in 7 days. What if Jason finds out? She scoffed. I've hidden it well, he won't. And if he does, so what? He's so in love with me that just a crooked finger will mend things. How much trouble can he possibly cause? I'm telling you, don't spill the beans. Jason had heard enough, returning to his room with a heart frozen over, realizing he was nothing to her but an obedient puppy easily won over with a simple promise. He hadn't seen the reality sooner, knowing she wouldn't marry him, yet still trailing her for 12 years. In those 12 years, he confessed 9,999 times. He should have realized from each of her rejections that she didn't love him and wouldn't marry him. Luckily, he'd finally woken up from being her devoted puppy. In just 7 days, he'll leave her for good and marry someone else. The next day, Jason plans to go to the office to submit his resignation. After Selena graduated, she talked about starting her own business. No one believed in her except Jason. He helped her out. She promised Jason she'd repay him once she succeeded. So, trusting her confident promises, Jason gave up a high-paying job worth $300,000 a year. She lacked startup funding, so he hustled to find investors for her. No one gave her projects to start, so he scouted projects for her. He stood by her side as they built everything from scratch, turning it into a billion-dollar business. Yet, even now, he remains just an assistant earning $8,000 a month. Back then, he liked her, so he didn't mind being an $8,000 a month assistant. Now, since he's decided to leave her and marry someone else, there's no reason to stick around for that paycheck. In the president's office, Jason prints out his resignation letter and goes to Selena for her signature. Before signing, perhaps remembering her harsh words from the day before, Selena unexpectedly tosses a small gift box to Jason. Here, your birthday is in a few days. This is for you. Jason takes the gift box from Selena and opens it. Inside is a gold necklace. Before, this would have thrilled Jason, but now he's just calm. He knows this necklace is the freebie throw-in with a $50 million blue diamond she purchased. In her eyes, he's worth only the freebies. Like a dog, happy with just any old bone thrown its way. Selena thought Jason would be speechless with joy, but his face showed no emotion. Jason's odd behavior these past couple of days leaves Selena frowning. She's about to say something, but Jason slides the resignation papers her way. There's a document that needs your signature. Trusting Jason too much, she assumes it's an important contract and signs it without so much as a glance. But just as Jason is about to leave with the signed document, Selena senses something's off. She can't help but ask, "What did I just sign?" Not wanting to explain, Jason waves it off casually. "Oh, nothing significant, just some regular papers." "Oh, right. I'm taking a few days off. I won't be coming into work. After all, he doesn't need to come in anymore now that he's resigned." Okay. Without much thought, Selena nods. She doesn't want Jason continually running into her official fiancé at the office, causing unnecessary trouble. Suddenly recalling something, Selena adds, "Once your break is over, make sure you come back soon. There are a ton of big projects waiting for you to help me negotiate." Jason murmurs his acknowledgement. What Selena doesn't realize is that this resignation means he's never coming back. After being her assistant for so many years, he's just utterly exhausted. He turns to leave. As he reaches the front desk, he runs into Selena's future husband, a receptionist named Charles. Charles is surrounded by a group of colleagues. He's holding up his fair right hand, showing off, "This ring was bought at an auction by my fiancé. Cost a solid $50 million. Beautiful, right? You've probably never seen such expensive jewelry, so take this chance to feast your eyes." The diamond ring is indeed dazzling, but Charles is just a receptionist at the company, a mere decorative figure. His background is quite ordinary. How'd he ever get the chance to land a rich clique and own such a costly ring? Everyone's looking on skeptically. That can't be real, can it? Come on, 50 million? Stop joking around, Charles. Hearing this, Charles's face turns red, and he retorts stiff-necked, "It's not fake. Don't spout nonsense." Feeling prickled by their skepticism, Charles suddenly seems to think of something and hurriedly pulls a housing deed out of his bag, slapping it onto the table. Besides this $50 million ring, my fiance also bought me a house in Jiangnan Shuiyuan. Go on, see for yourselves. Colleagues gather around curiously, flipping through the housing deed. Sure enough, it's a house in Jiangnan Shuiyuan, and everyone begins to envy Charles. Wow, Charles, you've really hit the big time. Which wealthy family did you join? One to buy such an expensive house in Jiangnan Shuiyuan like Selena. The crowd presses on, curious. But Charles just smiles mysteriously, saying everyone will soon know who he's marrying. Others might not know, but Jason does. Charles is marrying Selena. If he remembers right, Charles is Selena's junior and was hired in the first year of our group, handpicked by Selena. Back then, Selena wanted Charles to be her new assistant. But no matter how Jason trained him, he couldn't even manage the simplest tasks like stamping documents. Never mind taking on high-stakes project negotiations like Jason could. So it wasn't long before Selena gave up on the idea of Charles being her assistant. She just moved him to receptionist as decoration. The irony is, this decorative piece ended up beating Jason, winning over Selena. These 12 years, Jason had been braving storms for her up front, while all Charles needed to do was stand there, and he'd get what Jason had striven for, the unattainable. Jason felt a chill as he thought about his devoted efforts for the company and caring for Selena, all turning into a grand joke, just clothing someone else's wedding dress. As the others continue probing, Selena suddenly shows up. What are you all gathered around for? Isn't there work to do? Hearing Selena's voice, everyone scatters, returning to their stations. Selena turns to Jason. Weren't you taking a break? Why are you still here? Oh, I just overheard the receptionist talking about getting married. Thought I'd drop by to congratulate him. Upon hearing that, Selena frowns. He didn't say who he's marrying. Did he? Nope. Why? Nothing, just wondering. Hearing Jason's answer, Selena relaxes noticeably. Relaxed, Selena continues, no need to make dinner and wait for me tonight. I'm heading out with friends for drinks, probably back late. And since dinner is off the table, just go home and finish the bidding proposal for the new project. I don't trust anyone else with it. Even knowing he's on leave, she still orders him around. She really put on quite the act, pretending so well. Even while hiding that she was going to marry someone else, she tried to squeeze every last bit of value out of him. But he wasn't going to give her the satisfaction anymore. Jason didn't respond. Selena noticed his silence, furrowing her brows as she urged, "Did you hear me?" Jason remained silent, turning away and leaving under her gaze. Watching Jason's retreating figure, Selena frowned. Was it her imagination, or was Jason getting stranger? Yet, thinking about how Jason had liked her for 12 years, always eager for her attention, she figured just a smile and some flattery would do the trick. This thought oddly put her mind at ease. Jason returned to his apartment. Gazing at the place he'd turned into a second home, he decided to pack up everything. He wasn't going to stay, so he should clear out of this place and leave it for its future owner. From noon until late night, he packed his belongings into several suitcases. The night wore on, and his stomach growled with hunger. Just as he was about to grab a bite to eat, his phone buzzed. He answered it to hear one of Selena's friends authoritatively demanding, "Jason, Selena's drunk. Bring some hangover medicine to room 5 at night bar." Before he could respond, the call ended, as if they were sure he would come. Jason didn't want to go, but remembered some things he had left in the apartment storage. To fully clear his stuff, he needed the key Selena still held. After some thought, he dragged his tired self out the door. As Jason pushed open the room door, he was greeted by the teasing laughter of Selena's friends. "See, I told you he'd come. Our Selena's here, and he just can't stay away." Selena, lounging in the main seat, took a sip of her drink and pointed to someone on the couch, laughing, "I win this round. Remember, whoever loses pays for tonight's drinks. Betting against a sure winner, that's gutsy." Hearing Selena's words, Jason got the picture. Selena wasn't drunk. They just made a bet on whether he'd come. They'd played this game several times before. Once, they tricked him over pretending Selena was in a car accident. He rushed there only to find her perfectly fine, laughing with her friends as he stood there, furious. Since then, Selena and her friends loved using him for their amusement. They didn't expect that even after all those times, he'd still come. Just so, the one who lost the bet groaned from the couch, berating Jason. "Why are you such a sucker? Always showing up at a single call. Even at midnight? Do you have no pride?" Another girl chimed in, "Hey, that's too harsh. You know how much Jason adores our Selena, following her for over a decade. Calling him a dog is kinda mean." Then she laughed maliciously, adding, "Saying he's just a simp is more like it." Their derisive laughter and scornful eyes stung. Selena merely watched the drama unfold, not stopping it. Though she had prepared to calm Jason as usual, she instead noticed his calm breath and his eyes resting on her. "The storage key, please?" Selena frowned, not reaching for the key, but approached Jason with, "Are you upset? You look a bit cold." She paused, then added, "They were just joking, don't take it to heart. They meant no harm. I can have them apologize, it's no big deal." Jason simply replied, "Oh," with little reaction. Taken aback, Selena shrugged it off and waved her friends over. "He's mad. Hurry up and apologize." Chorusing half-hearted sorries. They lacked any sincerity. Jason's expression remained unchanged, eyes still on Selena. The key? Surprised at his calm demeanor, Selena felt he seemed different, though she couldn't figure out how. But she reassured herself, thinking, as much as Jason liked her, he couldn't change that much. Feeling it was in her head, she retrieved the key from her pocket. Jason took it and turned to leave. As he exited, he overheard her friends asking Selena, "Why'd you make us apologize to that simp?" "Jason? You don't get it," Selena replied. "Jason's been into me for so long. Always giving him the cold shoulder would ruin his self-confidence. You need to balance it out, one harsh word, one sweet gesture, to keep him devoted. Right? Selena? Right?" Hearing that right, Jason found it all amusing. No wonder, every time he was livid, Selena would offer gifts or kind words. Once pacified, she'd revert to her aloof self. He'd naively believed she was yet to accept him because he needed to do better. But now he realized it wasn't about his efforts. Selena just wanted to keep him as her loyal follower. Choosing to marry someone else now felt like the right decision. Holding the key, he headed downstairs, ready to catch a cab back. From his ride, he caught sight of Charles, who made a phone call, and a minute later, Selena came down herself to greet him. She held Charles close, asking, "How come you're out here in the cold? I missed you. Is that a problem?" "No, not at all, come on in." Selena gently wrapped her arms around Charles and helped him up the stairs. But after just a few steps, Charles's shoelaces came undone. Without thinking twice, Selena knelt down to tie them for him, her eyes full of tenderness. Jason watched Selena tie the shoelaces, his pupils shrinking in surprise. He was used to doing these kinds of humble, pleasing tasks and never imagined that the always high and mighty Selena would do it for someone else. Selena's friend, who had come out for a smoke, saw this and was equally shocked. "Holy crap, who would have thought our big boss from our group would be tying someone else's shoes?" Selena seemed annoyed and ordered her friend to stub out the cigarette. "Charles can't stand the smell of smoke, so if you've got to smoke, do it far away. And don't swear around Charles. If you scare him, you'll regret it." Frightened by Selena's warning, her friend scurried away. Watching from a cab, Jason noticed how differently Selena protected Charles compared to how she treated him. Whenever friends joked around him, Selena stayed indifferent, like an outsider. But when Charles was involved, just a cigarette and a curse and Selena's rage seemed enough to flay them alive. So what else was there for him to not understand? Getting home, it was already 2 a.m. Jason tossed and turned, unable to sleep. By the time Selena returned, it was already the next morning. The place felt empty, and many of Jason's belongings had mysteriously disappeared. Selena couldn't help but ask, "Where's your stuff?" Jason brushed it off with an excuse. "A lot of things were old, so I threw them out." There was nothing wrong with what he said, but something still felt off to Selena. However, with her wedding to Charles coming up, it didn't seem right for Jason to stay there anyway. Charles would definitely cry if he knew. He was much more fragile than the ever-strong Jason. After thinking it through, Selena calmly stated, "If you're packing up, make sure it's completely done." Jason nodded, silent and without elaboration. Seeing him quiet, Selena bit back her words. It'll be okay, she thought. Even if Jason really has changed, given his feelings for her, a little coaxing would fix it. Just like when they started the company, a few empty promises would suffice. Of all the men in her life, none were as easy to please as Jason. Regaining her focus, Selena directed Jason, "Last night I drank too much. Go make me some hangover soup. I've got to go out and I want it home cooked." Then she walked away, but before Jason could move, she grabbed his arm. "Where are you going?" "What?" Jason retorted with a question of his own. "You're not making me soup. Did you at least finish last night's bid proposal?" "No," Jason replied bluntly, shaking off Selena's hand and leaving the apartment. Selena stood there, her face darkening with frustration. Jason was getting stranger. Wasn't he afraid she'd truly leave him? Jason left to pick up a suit. The wedding was only days away, and he promised that person he'd be there at the courthouse in a suit. So no suit? No go. At the high-end tailor's, Jason asked for the suit he'd ordered. The store manager was hesitant, as if there was something difficult to say. "What's up? Is there a problem with my suit?" "Sorry, Jason, your suit's been ordered by someone else. I paid a deposit." "How can someone else order it?" "Well, they paid more," the manager began, but Jason interrupted, "Who took my suit?" Just then, a sweet voice chimed in with the doorbell. "Is my suit ready? I want to try it on." Looking up, Jason saw Charles once again. Though not close at work, Jason knew Charles quite well personally. Charles seemed taken aback to see him. "Jason, what a coincidence. You're getting a suit too?" "Yeah," Jason replied. "Are you getting married, Jason?" "Yes." From the start at our group, Jason was only known as Selena's assistant. Except for some close friends, nobody knew their real relationship. Selena clearly hadn't mentioned him to Charles, who just assumed he was only Selena's assistant. "When's your wedding, Jason?" Charles asked excitedly. "The 7th, Jason replied. "Oh wow," Charles exclaimed. "What are the odds? I'm getting married on the 7th too." Then he curiously asked, "Which suit did you choose, Jason?" Jason pointed to a heart-patterned suit displayed in the window. "That one." "No way. Same day, same suit." "Jason, you've got me curious about your bride." Charles chuckled. Jason just smiled and said, "Guess." Charles paused slightly, considering something but quickly changed the subject. Since Jason had originally ordered the suit, even though Charles offered more, the manager gave Charles a refund and Jason got his suit. As Charles left, he bitterly commented, "What a crappy store. Someday, I'll have my wife shut this place down." After Charles was gone, Jason picked up his neatly wrapped suit and headed back. In the apartment, Selena was waiting for him on the couch. Selena didn't notice the suit in his hand. With her brows knitted into a furrow, she asked, "Why are you back so late?" "Oh, something came up," Jason replied casually. Selena didn't press Jason on where he'd been. Pausing for a moment, she held back her frustration and asked, "The partners are pushing for the bid proposal. When exactly are you going to finish it?" Her tone carried a hint of accusation and anger, as if Jason had made a huge mistake. Jason didn't want to argue, so he simply said, "I'm on vacation." "So what? Just because you're on vacation, you can't work? This proposal is crucial for the future of our group. Do you know how important it is to both me and the company?" she said, slapping the desk in exasperation. Jason just stared at her, thinking how strange she was. Sure, the proposal was important to our group and Selena, but not to him, especially since he wasn't even with our group anymore. Even if he was an employee, couldn't someone else handle it? He kept quiet, just watching Selena fume. Even though he didn't say a word, his silent gaze seemed to get under her skin. Selena tried to cool her temper, realizing she might have overreacted. So she softened her tone and walked over, putting a hand on his shoulder and said, "Jason, I know working with me all these years hasn't been easy. Once you finish this proposal, I'll announce to everyone at our group that you're being promoted to vice president. You'll be second only to me, practically like the owner of our group, okay? If this were the old Jason, he might have teared up with excitement. But knowing Selena's ways now, he wasn't moved by her promises anymore. Years ago, he gave up a $300,000 job for her word, and yet he'd gotten nothing in return but empty promises. Selena thought his lack of response meant he wasn't pleased. She asked him, "Aren't you happy with what I said?" "Yeah," Jason replied softly, hiding his true feelings. "I'm happy." "Good. Then help me with the proposal like a good boy," she said with relief, not noticing the cold detachment in his eyes. Then Selena picked up a call, and Jason heard a man's voice on the other end. Selena hung up and quickly left the room without explanation. Every day, Selena pressed Jason on the proposal, but he kept stalling. As the days dragged on, it finally brought them to the day before Jason's 30th birthday. While Jason was away, Selena hired a temporary assistant. The new assistant kept making mistakes, and the office often echoed with Selena's scolding. "What's wrong with you? If you can't do this, you're out," Selena yelled. The assistant, feeling wronged, replied, "These tasks were Jason's before. I'm still figuring things out." Selena tossed down the papers, rubbing her temples in frustration. "When is Jason coming back? Didn't he quit?" The assistant began to ask before being interrupted by a familiar face. Charles cheerfully hugged Selena. "Selena, tomorrow's our wedding day. I want it to be special. Let's get the marriage certificate first thing, okay?" Seeing Charles, Selena tried to push aside the work stress, dotingly tapping his nose. "Okay, whatever makes you happy." Charles gave a sweet smile and kissed Selena's cheek. "You're amazing, Selena." That night, Selena thought about things and told Jason, "Your vacation's over tomorrow, right? Got the proposal done? If so, go to the office and send it to the partners. Also, don't come looking for me tomorrow. I've got some things to take care of." She expected Jason to react a certain way, prepared for it, yet he agreed without question. This caught her off guard. "Aren't you curious about where I'll be tomorrow?" Jason just smiled silently. In the past, he would have followed her everywhere because he liked her. Now that he didn't, her whereabouts meant nothing to him. "Really? Nothing you want to ask?" Selena probed, staring suspiciously. Jason nodded. "Actually, there is something." "What?" "Selena, I'm turning 30 tomorrow. Remember I said if you weren't marrying me by then, I'd move on?" "I remember, but wasn't that a joke?" "Who takes jokes seriously? Besides, with the company starting up, I have no intention of marrying." Jason used to be so infatuated. She couldn't imagine him walking away just because he turned 30, so she thought it was all a joke. Seeing she didn't care, Jason simply nodded. "I understand." The next morning, Selena left all dolled up, while Jason watched her go, feeling relief that it was finally over. He donned his own suit, left a wedding invitation behind, and walked out the door. "Selena, from now on you walk your own path, and I'll walk mine. We're done. I won't bother you anymore." After leaving the apartment, Jason hailed a taxi to the courthouse. His future was ahead, and he was ready to find his own happiness. At the courthouse, he didn't see his fiance yet but bumped into Selena instead. A group of her friends, likely there to support her, was there too. Seeing Jason in a suit, they collectively gave him odd looks, the kind they always gave when he was chasing after Selena. Their expressions were a mix of mockery and disdain. Jason knew they assumed he was there for Selena again. After all, he'd trailed after her for 12 years, enduring hardship and heartache. Today was his 30th birthday, and they thought he was coming to pressure her into marrying him. When Selena saw him in a suit, her face darkened, barely containing her twisted expression as she fumed. "Didn't I tell you not to come? Are you so desperate to marry me that you're here in a suit to force me?" Jason ignored the anger on her face and said coldly, "I'm not here for you." But Selena didn't believe him. She looked at Jason, annoyed. "Have you had enough? If you're not here for me, are you gonna bother another woman?" Jason was sure that Jason was deeply in love with her and couldn't let her go. Selena's friend gave Jason a contemptuous look up and down. I can't believe it, a guy with no shame. Pushing for marriage right at the courthouse. As the seconds ticked by, Charles should be arriving any moment. Selena was worried they'd run into each other. So she quickly shook off Jason's hand and whispered harshly, "If you're smart, you'll leave now. Or don't blame me for what happens." Jason stepped back several times before steadying himself, looking a bit dazed at his bruised wrist. "Today's my 30th birthday. I know. You just want me to marry you on my 30th birthday. But like I've told you, the company's just starting up, and I don't have that in mind. But I can't wait." Jason looked up, his eyes calm. Selena knew she wouldn't marry him, so his fiancé wasn't her. But what she and her friend heard was Jason begging Selena to marry him. Selena's face turned cold. "Jason, do you understand English? I've said it. I'm not marrying you today. Geez, how can a guy have no self-respect? Jason, you're really a piece of work. Selena's unlucky to be stuck with you," her friend mocked, even giving Jason a push. "If you want to get married on your 30th birthday, just pick someone else. I'm not marrying you." Jason loved her so much. How could he choose someone else? Selena thought confidently, so she didn't mind using harsh words to provoke him. One of the women who had earlier insulted him watched the scene unfold, even whistling playfully. "Jason, why not marry me? I'm a bit of a flirt, but I'm really good in bed." The crude joke went right over Jason's head. He looked cold. "No thanks, I have someone in mind. She just flew in from overseas, probably needs a bit more time." Jason's words made Selena's group of friends burst into laughter. Does this person even exist? You like Selena so much, will you really marry someone else? Or is this just another lie? Ha ha ha, maybe the bride's a figment of imagination. I can't believe Jason's this desperate. Selena listened to her friends, her brow furrowed. Time was tight. She didn't want to waste more words on Jason, so she said, "Jason, I told you, I don't want to get married right now. Are you deaf? Do you understand what I'm saying?" Selena figured, since Jason loved her so much, she could say whatever she wanted, and later just buy something small and sweet talk him out of it. Just like the past 12 years, she'd done plenty of unreasonable things, but Jason, despite saying he was mad and leaving, always came running back in the end. Selena was eager to have Jason leave, but no matter what she said, Jason wouldn't budge. "I hear you, Selena, but today the person I'm marrying isn't you." Selena snorted with laughter. "You're lying about that just to pressure me into marrying you? Jason, when did you become so irritating? Before I lose my patience, you better leave." Selena grew more insistent on chasing him away. With a look, her friends rushed forward to drag Jason off. These friends were strong, and Jason was pinned down, unable to budge. He wouldn't leave the courthouse. If he left and couldn't be seen there later, she'd think he didn't want to marry. Just as Jason was figuring out how to wriggle free from their hold, a voice rang out, "Stop." Jason flinched and turned his head. The newbie wasn't Wendy, the woman he intended to marry, but Charles. Charles, in a suit, walked up to Selena. She was just about to speak up, Before she could finish, Charles brushed past her and headed toward Jason. Reaching Jason, Charles gave him a hard slap. "Jason, I can't believe how shameless you are. You like my wife so much we can't shake you off like a clingy little pug. You knew we were getting married today, and you come here to disrupt at the courthouse. Huh?" Jason, held tightly by Selena's friends, couldn't get free and endured Charles's slap. His ear buzzed, and even a trickle of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. Looking up at the venomous-faced Charles, Jason sneered, "Your wife? Who's your wife?" Charles looked bewildered. "You have to be kidding. Of course, my wife is..." Selena stepped in, quickly interrupting Charles. "Enough, hurry and get Jason out of here. It's disgraceful to cause a scene at the courthouse." She finished talking. Once more, she signaled her friends to hurry up and take Jason away. Seeing her signal, they held on to Jason tightly and were about to take him away. However, just as they turned to lead him away, Jason spoke again. "Selena, you don't want to marry me at 30 because you're marrying Charles, right?" Once he said that, everyone but Charles froze. Selena didn't expect Jason to already know she was marrying Charles. At that moment, Connecting Jason's odd behavior lately, she realized he knew all along. No wonder he didn't wash her designer clothes by hand anymore. No wonder he kept dodging writing tender applications for her. A slight panic hit her heart. But Selena quickly calmed down. Even if Jason knew she was marrying Charles, so what? Jason had loved her for 12 whole years, given his youth to her. That kind of affection doesn't just vanish. She just had to give Jason a little sweetness. Promise he could still be by her side even if she was with Charles. Given his love, he'd surely go for that. Thinking about that, Selena refocused and calmly said to Jason, "I'll explain this to you later. Just be good and go home for now." Jason suddenly laughed, making Selena's skin crawl. Even at this point, "Selena, you're still trying to deceive me?" Before Selena could respond, Charles spoke up first. "What did Selena lie to you about? You're just taking advantage of the fact that you and Selena grew up together. That's why you think you can just keep hanging around. But let me tell you, Jason, Selena loves me the most. I'm the one she wants to marry, so give up on your delusions. You're just a pathetic guy. No matter how long you try, Selena will never like you, right? Selena?" After speaking, Charles looked at Selena. She felt her scalp tighten under his gaze. If she said no, Charles would definitely cause trouble later. If she said yes, then Jason... Oh well, Jason's definitely easier to deal with than Charles. So, Selena nodded and said, "That's right." Even though Jason already knew how Selena felt, hearing her say it was still harsh. He struggled to keep his emotions in check and asked calmly, "Is that truly how you feel?" Listening to Jason's calm voice, Selena felt something was off. But then she thought Jason's loved her for so long. He just can't handle the shock. Once she and Charles get their paperwork done today, she'll explain everything to him. Today's about Charles. She can't let him be upset. So, looking into Jason's eyes, she quietly replied, "Yes, that's truly how I feel." Hearing her admit it, Jason's laugh turned bitter. But at least now it's clear, so there won't be any misunderstandings when he gets married. Are you done asking questions? If so, leave already. Don't hold up Charles and me getting our papers. Selena's urgency was obvious. She just wanted Jason gone. Jason, suddenly fueled by unknown strength, pushed away those holding him and insisted, "I'm not leaving, Selena. I've made it very clear. I'm not marrying you. My fiance and I agreed on my 30th birthday. She'd meet me at the registry to marry me." Still making stuff up, Charles scoffed and raged. "Never seen a guy as shameless as you." Just then, a commotion arose outside the registry. Everyone turned to see a line of luxury cars in front, with a Rolls-Royce in the middle flying a flag. Clearly, whoever owned the car was not just wealthy, but powerful. Moments later, the driver opened the door of the main car, and out stepped an elegant, dignified woman. Jason knew it was her, the woman he was going to marry. Selena quickly pulled Jason back. "Jason, what are you doing? Know your place." The woman clearly belonged to high society. Though Selena was a billionaire, she wasn't at the top in a city like this. Why was Jason getting involved? What if he offended someone powerful? Growing up together, Jason quickly understood Selena's thoughts. "That's my fiancée. Isn't it normal that I meet her? Come on, when did you meet someone like her?" Selena laughed. "Stop dreaming, Jason. You're just a low-level assistant at the R group. She wouldn't even look at you. Even if you're pretending, find someone more believable." The woman arrived with a fleet of cars, sporting a rare watch, custom-made from Vacheron Constantin. As a woman herself, Selena couldn't match up. Why would such a figure care for Jason? The thought made things crystal clear for Selena. She knew there really wasn't a fiancé. Jason was just trying to provoke her. After all these years, who else could he marry? Charles, observing Wendy, had an idea to humiliate Jason. "Jason, if you claim that woman is your fiancé, bring her over." Selena began to intervene, but Charles stopped her. "Selena, Jason has already said he's marrying someone else. Don't get in his way." Others laughed too. "Yeah, Jason said that important lady is his fiancée. Let's see him do it. Ha ha ha. He'll probably get thrown out by the bodyguards before he gets close. That's the biggest joke I've heard all year." chasing after Selena all these years, now claiming someone like that is his fiance. Jason realized they were mocking him, expecting him to be humiliated. But they would be disappointed. He was indeed Wendy's fiance. As Jason got closer to Wendy, others smirked, waiting for the drama. Seeing him reach out to Wendy, they thought for sure she'd push him away. Yet, to everyone's shock, when Jason approached and held out his hand, the elegant woman actually took his hand. Minutes later, Wendy walked with Jason back to the group, coolly introducing herself. Jason mentioned you wanted to meet me. I'm Wendy, Jason's fiancée. Wendy didn't extend her hand, retaining an air of authority, but no one questioned it. She had the clout. Suddenly, those expecting a show were frozen in place. No one anticipated that the rejected Jason would have a more prestigious fiancée. Selena's easy smile froze, feeling an inexplicable panic. Wasn't Jason devoted to her for all these years? How could he suddenly move on, planning to marry another? When did he meet someone so significant? Selena's joy from the thought of marrying her beloved vanished completely. She felt choked up. Jason was like a shadow, always there. She never imagined he'd marry someone else. Even when Jason said it, she thought it was just a ploy. Standing beside Wendy, Charles isn't contemplating as deeply as Selena. He just felt that Wendy wasn't just beautiful. She was surprisingly wealthy too. Jason actually managed to snag such a big shot as his fiancée. Thinking about it made Charles a bit envious. He reached out to Wendy, saying, "Hi, I'm Charles. Nice to meet you." Finally meeting the legendary fiancée of Jason. Up close, Charles found Wendy even more attractive. She not only had power and money but also blessed with great looks. Her eyes were captivating, with a high nose and thin lips, a face like it was carved from stone, fair skin, and striking features. Even someone as stunning as Selena paled in comparison beside her. Wendy was born into a wealthy family and held a high position, already familiar with all sorts of flattering and tactics from men. To her, Charles wasn't even in her league, and his little tricks and hidden flattery were easy to spot. Wendy didn't shake his hand, not even sparing him a glance, leaving his hand hanging awkwardly in the air. Charles's smile froze, and he withdrew his hand awkwardly, mumbling, "Sorry, I was just curious about how Jason suddenly got a fiancé and wanted to meet you." Selena, seeing her beloved man embarrassed, quickly comforted him with a gentle voice that she'd never used in front of Jason. Instinctively, she glanced at Jason, standing beside Wendy. She thought he would be jealous, maybe explode, and shout that enough was enough. Maybe he'd confess that Wendy was just an actress he hired to win her back. But he didn't. Jason stood quietly next to Wendy, not even casting a glance Selena's way. He ignored all her comforting words to Charles, acting as if he genuinely didn't care about her anymore. Wendy didn't want to waste time. She turned to Jason. "It's getting late. Let's go get the marriage certificate." Jason quietly nodded. "All right, everything as you say." With that, he took Wendy's arm, and they walked naturally into the marriage office. At that moment, Selena realized Jason wasn't faking it. Utterly panicked, she stepped in front of them, disregarding Charles beside her. "Jason," she cried, "you've liked me for 12 years. How can you casually marry another woman? Do you even know her background? Do you think hurting yourself by marrying someone else because I'm marrying someone is worth it?" She threw question after question at Jason, who just laughed. Jason was about to speak, but Wendy cut in, patting his hand. "You must be Selena. Jason mentioned you. Before marrying me, he told me about you, just as I told him about myself. We know each other's backgrounds. No need to worry. And Jason didn't marry me out of spite. He decided to move on from you after careful consideration. You didn't appreciate him, so what's wrong with him pursuing his happiness? Today is our wedding day, and marrying him is a great fortune for me. I'm in a good mood and don't wish to dwell on things. But if you continue with this nonsense, don't blame me for being rude." Wendy narrowed her eyes, sharp and commanding. Everyone present realized she wasn't joking. This stirred a long-lost warmth in Jason's heart. He knew Wendy was standing up for him. A woman he had known for less than a year was standing by him without hesitation. In contrast, Selena, who grew up with him in a close-knit way, never stood by him, even though he supported her life and her group tirelessly. Jason was thankful he stopped the bleeding in time and chose Wendy. Ignoring the varied expressions around them, Wendy walked hand in hand with Jason into the office. During the photo session, Wendy's cool demeanor softened as she affectionately hugged Jason's waist, her eyes full of love. Jason beamed, truly eager to make things work with Wendy. The resulting photo on a red background turned out to be incredibly loving and enviable. Meanwhile, Charles and Selena, who had ended up directly behind them, seemed preoccupied. The photographer frowned, tirelessly trying to guide their poses. Eventually, he sighed, "Are you too sure you want to get married? Not being forced, right?" Afterward, neither of them looked pleased. With their marriage certificate in hand, Jason felt something indescribable, not sadness, but a subtle joy. He was grateful he let go of Selena and married Wendy, thankful he hadn't continued down the wrong path. From afar, Selena saw the red certificate Jason held. The sight felt sharply painful, a reminder of her once confident claim that Jason would never marry anyone else, now starkly disproven. No matter how she tried, she couldn't grasp why Jason, after 12 years of affection, could suddenly give up. Was it something she lacked? Aside from not giving him the title of husband, she had been kind to him, hadn't she? A pang of dull pain hit her heart, while Charles's grasp brought her back to reality. He tried to hold her hand, but she stiffened and refused. After getting their certificate, Wendy and Jason left together. Watching their receding figures, Selena's heart felt like it was being squeezed by an iron grip, suffocating her. She wanted to run up and stop Jason from leaving so many times, but her rationality held her back. She wanted to regret it, but it was too late for that. At least even if Jason was marrying Wendy, he'd still be a part of our group as an assistant. That thought made Selena feel a bit better. Just then, Selena's phone rang. It was her secretary. "Hey, Selena, I've taken care of everything you asked for." Hearing that, Selena remembered. Yesterday, she had planned a surprise for Charles, a wedding party right after they got their marriage certificate. She should have been happy marrying the person she loved. But thinking of Jason leaving her to marry someone else just ruined it. "Selena, everyone's here. When are you and Jason coming over?" The secretary was urging on the other end. Selena, annoyed, gave a quick got it and said she'd bring Charles over soon. Leaving the registry and arriving at the wedding party took them an hour. When Charles showed up at the party, everyone realized Selena was marrying our group's receptionist. Charles. Am I seeing this right? Selena's mysterious fiancé is actually Charles from the front desk. Oh, that's why Charles was showing off his ring and house deed at work. Selena gave them to him. Wow, Charles hit the jackpot and became a swan from an ugly duckling. Charles felt quite smug hearing those whispers. At last, he could proudly appear as Selena's husband. But Selena next to him wasn't as happy. She heard the sarcasm in the whispers around them. Suppressing her feelings, Selena forced a smile and took Charles to toast. She had invited quite a few past partners to the party. She approached a partner in a designer suit, a man around 45. Selena remembered well. Jason had worked tirelessly to win her project, even ending up in the hospital with stomach bleeding from stress. Jason's dedication impressed this man and secured the first investment for our group. That investment rejuvenated our group and made the picky executive appreciate Jason. Now, seeing Selena holding Charles's hand, the partner smiled. "Selena, I thought you'd marry Jason. Jason's a hard worker." When our group was just starting, he was the backbone. The executive sipped his drink. He was deeply devoted. I'll never forget seeing his bloodshot eyes and how he kept pushing himself. For a fresh graduate to work so hard at an unknown company, it was surprising. But later I understood he stayed for someone. He shook his head, disappointed for Jason. In the end, it's just empty joy. What he longed for went to someone else. Selena blushed red, silent for a moment before fumbling. But, Jason's marrying someone else today too. Bet you broke his heart. A man gives his prime years and leaves only when deeply disappointed. Selena was speechless. Next to her, Charles felt belittled and, losing his cool, lashed out at the executive. "Are you sent by Jason? I knew he was shameless, about to marry and still ruining our happiness. Stop it." With an increasingly dark expression from the executive, Selena yelled at Charles, quickly apologizing. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kim. My husband didn't mean it." Before Selena could finish, Charles screamed, hitting her. "Why can't I speak? This old man brought up Jason to insult me. You promised to treat me well forever. Have you changed? Want Jason instead?" His outbursts were like missiles at this publicly embarrassing wedding party. Labeled as old man, Mr. Kim sneered, waving his hand dismissively. Whether Charles meant it or not is clear. "I'm old, but not blind. I'll reconsider any future dealings with our group." With that, Mr. Kim ignored Selena's attempts to stop him and left. Other executives close to him exchanged looks and followed. The lively wedding party turned into a spectacle. Looking at the overbearing Charles, Selena felt exhausted. She once admired his simplicity, wanting to protect his innocence. Charles was clumsy, making mistakes and not invested in work. He couldn't even manage simple tasks like obtaining signatures. But it was fine with Selena. She never allowed anyone to criticize him, willing to be his shield. She even placed him at the front desk with little work to ensure his leisure, making him our group's male head. Selena always thought Jason was too savvy and lacked Charles's charming naivete. She disregarded Jason, taking his love for granted, with promises turning empty. At that moment, she couldn't help but think if she married Jason, he wouldn't cause such a scene at the wedding and make a fool of them like this. Charles asked her if she regretted wanting to marry Jason. Selena wasn't sure, but she knew she no longer felt as strongly about marrying Charles. Selena looked at the wedding venue, now a bit empty from people leaving, rubbed her temples. She had a headache. Charles's behavior today had embarrassed Mr. Jean, and he left angrily. Those savvy business partners must already know our group's boss lady is a bit out of touch. This wasn't going to be good for the company's growth. Charles had been sulking, but seeing Selena's serious face not trying to cheer him up like usual, he got a little scared. After all, Selena was the best of the many women he had seduced. Rich, beautiful, easy to fool, and she doted on him. So close to marrying into wealth, Charles wasn't going to let this big fish go. He quickly put on a tearful act to appease Selena. "I'm sorry, Selena. I just care about you too much. I was scared Jason would take you away, that's why I acted like this. You guys grew up as childhood friends, and then that person said all those things. I just feel so insecure. It's my first relationship, and the first time I've loved someone this much. Can you forgive me for anything I messed up? You're all I have, Selena. I really can't be without you." Selena was very frustrated but softened at Charles's words. He's still a college student, young, and it's his first relationship. He loves her too much to think straight. It wasn't on purpose, she thought. She sighed and forgave Charles. Charles immediately broke into a smile and snuggled into Selena's arms. "I always knew Selena's the best to me." When Selena wasn't looking, Charles gave a satisfied grin. He knew this trick worked on Selena. From the moment they met, he'd been playing the role she liked, successfully pushing Jason out of her life and taking up a spot in her heart. The two completed the wedding ceremony smoothly. Charles wore a triumphant smile. He'd finally made it into the upper crust. No one would ever know he used to be a gigolo. From now on, he'd bask in the glory as the son-in-law of a wealthy family. After everything wrapped up, Selena returned to her apartment at night, exhausted. Felt empty with no trace of Jason left. Selena felt a bit dazed. She remembered how lately many of Jason's things had gone missing. When she asked, Jason said they were old and he threw them out. Now it seemed they weren't thrown away, but taken by Jason. Jason had known for a while that she wouldn't marry him and prepared to leave. But when did he realize? A splash of red on a wedding invitation caught Selena's eye, feeling a bit glaring. Before she could react, Charles snatched it up, tore it to pieces and tossed them in the bin. Sounding jealous and annoyed, he asked, Why are Jason's things still here? It's a wedding invitation. How tacky. I don't know how Wendy could be so blind to like a guy like him. Feeling a bit annoyed, Selena quickly got distracted by Charles's affection. Charles wasn't as sweet and innocent as he looked. He was passionate and bold, spouting flirtatious words. His roaming hands overwhelmed Selena's senses before she even moved. Charles, with dreamy eyes and heavy breathing, said, "Selena, what do you think about trying it in the living room? There's a great view from the floor-to-ceiling window. It'd feel more thrilling." They were married now, and Charles thought about satisfying himself further. He'd tried this with other women and found it better than just in the bedroom. Afterward, Selena felt something was off. Charles was too skilled, not at all like a first-timer, more like a seasoned player in the art of pleasure. Realizing this, Charles playfully tried to distract Selena, but it wasn't enough to quell her suspicions. Deciding to find someone reliable to investigate Charles's past, she sensed he wasn't as pure and innocent as he looked. While lost in thought, Selena's phone rang. Her new assistant sounded anxious on the line. "Selena, tomorrow is the bidding conference, but the client is saying we haven't submitted our proposal yet." "What?" Selena incredulously raised her voice. "How is that possible? Jason was supposed to handle the proposal. Didn't he submit it?" "Jason resigned a while ago," the assistant replied, more confused. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Selena shouted. "I wanted to let you know, but Charles came by to discuss wedding plans." The assistant tried to explain. "Enough!" Selena cut her off. "There's no use talking about it now. Get in touch with the project lead and get me a proposal ready." There wasn't enough time, plus they lacked experience with the project. The rushed proposal was full of errors. As expected, our group lost the bid. Furiously, Selena lashed out at the company, even instating pay cuts. This bred resentment among the staff. Could she really blame them for the failed bid? With such last-minute orders, it was a miracle they managed to write anything. Getting the bid would be a miracle. Isn't this just an issue with the boss's management? Now it's all getting blamed on them. They were thinking, if only Selena hadn't been flirting with Charles and ignoring the company's business, and hadn't pushed Jason away, would things have turned out like this? Some of the more strong-willed tech staff already quit, while the rest are just sticking around while looking for new jobs. But Selena hasn't realized how serious the problem is. She just thought if they want to leave, let them leave. The company won't stop running just because someone left. Since she was able to build up our group, she figured her leadership and project instincts were solid. Losing this project? Well, she can always work on other projects. But she didn't think that Jason had helped with so much before. They'd discuss project stuff together. Now without Jason, her flaws in managing stuff are showing big time. To prove herself and make up for the lost project, Selena quickly invested in a new one. Barely did any due diligence, though. Her rush to succeed cost our group a huge chunk of money, even putting the cash flow in jeopardy. In her frenzy to fix things, Charles wasn't sympathetic at all. He just kept asking for luxury gifts. His demands escalated with her indulgence, from designer bags to limited edition sports cars, and later expensive auction jewelry. With the company's finances tight, every alert from her credit card made Selena's head throb. Selena even tried talking to Charles, asking him to cut back on the spending, explaining the company crisis. Luxuries were not necessities right now, but Charles only called her cheap and whined that spending wasn't a big deal for a company as big as her group. Charles never cooked. Every time Selena came home, he'd just have her order takeout. Coming home late from work events, she'd find Charles snoring. If he caught a whiff of the smoke or booze, he'd wrinkle his nose in disgust, annoyed she'd interrupted his sleep by getting home so late. In this draining life, Selena felt regret more vehemently than ever. When Jason was around, the house was always full of food smells. Jason would hand her a plate and say, "Try this, it's your favorite. You've worked hard, eat up. Homemade is cleaner than takeout, especially with your sensitive stomach." When she was hammered from events, there was always a light on for her. Walking inside, she'd find Jason tired but smiling, heading to the kitchen to make her some hangover soup. Back then, she thought Jason was overdoing it, nagging her like some fussy housekeeper. But now she could see how deeply ingrained his love was, consistent day in and day out. Selena's eyes misted over. She really missed Jason. Meanwhile, over in New Zealand, Jason was living happily post-marriage. Wendy was cold and commanding to others, but always caring and attentive to Jason. Anything Jason took a liking to would show up the next day. Even things he mentioned just in passing, which he'd forget, were etched in Wendy's memory to fulfill. Anything stylish and high-end, from Runway's latest to custom luxury cars, even pricey auction jewels, were given to Jason just for joy. Her estate was full of roses just for Jason, meticulously tended by staff. A Michelin 5-star chef handled meals because Wendy didn't want Jason to be tired. When Jason cooked occasionally, she'd savor every bite, showering him with praise, and gently kiss his forehead, calling him hardworking. Wendy kept Jason informed whenever she left. She'd spend time with him, be it reading or shopping, purely to be with him. Wendy was everything Selena wasn't. She saw and appreciated Jason's every effort and gave him the security and sense of occasion he needed. Their love was a fairy tale others envied. In this relationship, Jason felt love's warmth, starting to heal old scars. Selena was already feeling regretful about the marriage. A private investigator's file on Charles sent her regret skyrocketing. The envelope contained revealing photos and paperwork. The photos were so explicit, one might think they were filming an adult movie. The lead role featured her naive-seeming, newly wedded husband Charles. In them, he was tangled up with various women, looking seductive and scandalous. And the papers? They made it clear Charles wasn't a blank slate, but rather like a tabloid. Realizing she threw away Jason, who loved her wholeheartedly for over a decade, for this corrupt man, and almost bankrupting our group because of it, Selena felt like she could vomit blood. She found Charles right away and threw all the photos in his face. Of course, Charles wouldn't admit it. He looked hurt and said to Selena, "Selena, who gave you these photos? They're fake, obviously photoshopped. You know my background. Do you really think I'd do something like this?" But the evidence was undeniable, and Charles had nothing left to say. Unable to wait any longer, Selena immediately had a lawyer draft a divorce agreement. Naturally, Charles would leave with nothing. Both signed the divorce papers, and the next day they went to the Civil Affairs Bureau for their divorce certificate. Just when Charles was over the moon about a hefty settlement, he got knocked out by people Selena sent. When he came to, he found himself in the dirtiest nightclub in a city. There, people had all sorts of ways to torture. Most of those who went there had a taste for tormenting others. Selena coldly smirked. This was the ending she arranged for Charles. After all this, Selena started to really miss Jason. She missed having Jason by her side every day. She missed Jason's smile. She missed his tenderness. So, Selena started secretly searching for Jason. No matter what, even if she had to search to the ends of the earth, she was determined to find him. She hadn't kept her promise to marry him by the time he turned 30, but now she knew what she wanted. She was divorced from Charles and would apologize to Jason. After 12 years of feelings, if she apologized, she believed Jason would forgive her and come back. A few days later, her assistant finally found news about Jason. After getting their certificate with Wendy, she took Jason to New Zealand. When Selena got the news, she immediately booked a flight to New Zealand. Landing there, Selena hadn't slept a wink or eaten anything. She raced to the estate where Jason was. On the way, she felt both excited and nervous, like she was on a roller coaster. But as soon as she got to the estate, she was stopped by armed guards. Frustrated and helpless, Selena was determined to see Jason today. Just as she was about to push her way through, a familiar figure appeared. Selena recognized him immediately. It was Jason. Jason! Selena shouted excitedly. She imagined all kinds of reactions Jason might have. Heartache, anger, tears. But what she didn't expect was his calmness. A calm distance like he'd see a stranger. Selena's heart sank, filling with a dense bitterness. Jason walked towards her with elegant steps. "Why are you here? Shouldn't you be with Charles?" he asked, still expressionless, treating her like someone insignificant. Mentioning Charles, his former rival, brought no emotion either. Selena could deal with Jason yelling at her, hitting her, but she couldn't handle this indifference. Calm meant Jason no longer cared. She forced a smile but looked worse than crying. Jason, I've divorced Charles. Can we talk alone? Yet, when Jason approached, he didn't dismiss the guards or staff. Selena longed for privacy. She wanted to openly express her feelings and regret to Jason. Without a thought, Jason refused her request. I don't think there's anything to talk about. Your divorce from Charles has nothing to do with me. Please, I have something to say, she pleaded desperately, for the first time humbling herself in front of Jason. He found it ironic. If he were the old Jason, crazily in love with Selena, willing to give anything for her, he might have agreed to her plea. Enough, Jason said in annoyance. Stop saying you love me. It makes me sick. Selena, if you have any remorse, don't seek me out. Your presence only reminds me of those awful memories from the past. Bridge and road, go our separate ways peacefully. Never seeing each other again is our best outcome. Overwhelmed with fear, Selena's last glimmer of hope faded. Crying, she begged for forgiveness. Jason, please don't be so cruel to me. Hit me, yell at me, do anything to vent your anger, but I don't want to be strangers with you. Before Jason could reply, the sound of a car interrupted. A woman stepped out, as graceful and noble as when Selena first saw her. Compared to her, Selena seemed unkempt. A night of traveling left her suit wrinkled, clinging to her like limp salad. Kneeling, she resembled a pitiful dog, stripped of dignity. The stark contrast wounded her pride, filling her with shame. Humiliated in front of her rival, her face burned crimson. And yet, her rival looked down at her as if she were nothing but an ant. Their obvious affection for each other was like a knife stabbing into Selena's heart, twisting and causing her unbearable pain. She even found it hard to breathe. Wendy only then seemed to notice Selena, looking down from her heights. And who is this? She asked. Stammering, Selena finally said, I came to see Jason. Wendy, amused as if hearing a joke, replied, What do you want with my husband? Persistently, Selena repeated, I came to see Jason. Wendy got what she meant without her saying it. Basically, Selena didn't want to admit that Jason was now her husband. That made it all the more amusing for Wendy. Wasn't Selena the one who used to hate Jason? Even when he gave his all for you, standing by your side for 12 years, you felt nothing but annoyed, calling him a clingy lapdog. As far as I know, Selena's heart belonged to Charles, not Jason. Faced with undeniable facts, Selena had no defense. She could only offer her biggest token in a futile attempt to salvage a sliver of hope for their relationship. I was blind before, but I know now Jason is the only one I love, she confessed. I realize I've hurt him and done him wrong, but I want to make it up to him with the time I have left. Make it up to him? Wendy shook her head, looking at Selena like she was a child being unreasonable. The pain he endured, you can't repay it. How do you make up for 12 years filled with heartache, 12 years of giving you all his love? Did you know he drank to help you secure investments in the early years, damaging his stomach, causing irreversible harm to his health? His stomach acts up from time to time, leaving him in agony, sweating cold, rolling in bed. Did you know how he felt when he learned you were going to marry Charles? The breakdown, the torment? He endured it all silently, watching you show Charles the gentleness and favoritism he never received, slowly giving up through the stabbing pain in his heart. Wendy's words hit Selena like a sledgehammer, striking her straight in the heart. She left the estate in a daze. She returned home like a drowned rat. Once back, Selena couldn't focus on her business. She spent nights and days drinking, struggling with insomnia. Wendy's words echoing in her mind, whispering Jason's name. She lived like the walking dead. Then, one day, a wild-eyed, battered man stabbed her in the heart. That crazy man was Charles. He laughed maniacally and stabbed her repeatedly. Watching her blood gush out, he said with satisfaction, Die, Selena. This is your karma. As her consciousness faded, Selena thought in a daze, yeah, this is her karma. the consequences of trampling on genuine feelings. She wasn't scared of dying. Alone and with nothing, she had nothing to lose. She just missed Jason. She really, really missed him. In a blurry moment, Selena seemed to see Jason at 18, smiling at her, so bright and shy. Selena, if you want to go to that college, I'll go with you. Anyway, it's not like I must go to a college. This time, Selena didn't casually dismiss his heartfelt confession. Instead, she took his hand and said, "Okay, Jason, but it doesn't have to be that. If you want to go to a college, I can go with you there." When news of Selena's death reached Jason, he didn't go back home. There was nothing left between them. Later on, Jason and Wendy had 2 kids. In their calm and warm life, Jason had long forgotten the 12 years he devoted to a woman named Selena. He was content with his life now. The road ahead was long, and he wanted to grow old happily with Wendy.